Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Can you hear me? Yes. Jazakallah to Sheikh. Alhamdulillah. It's a real pleasure for me to be here, and especially to see Dr. Galib here. When I was in Edmonton, I had a very few but a great opportunity to meet with him, and he was always very helpful to come to the halaka we maintain with the Bangladeshi families and also the other Muslims, and that was a great help for us. And now it's a real pleasure to see that he is here full time to help us and to serve us so that we can learn deen from him. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And I will ask everybody to help him and to give him all the possible resources we have so that he can be a very effective teacher for our young kids, and he help us to grow them in Islam, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Should I speak in English or in Bangla? Young generations are English. Okay. Raise your hand. Who want is in English? MashaAllah. The Sheikh is giving the board, so I think I should not go the other way. Okay, how many want to do it in Bangla? Oh, so you want it in Bengali too? In both language? Okay, Jazakallah. Okay, so I will go in English, but in some part in Bengali too. So it will be a little bit mixed. Okay.
When Dr. Galib is going to do the Bengali, I'm going to translate for you into English.
Inshallah. Inshallah. So the thing that I'll be talking about is not for the kids especially, but it's related to them, but mostly for the parents, inshallah. And to remind ourselves the importance of the work that we are doing here, especially teaching deen to our kids will be the future generation of the Muslim Ummah in here and everywhere else. Now, alhamdulillah, that the teaching ilm, the ilm of the deen, learning the ilm of the deen, this is one of the best things that we can do. This is one of the best things. If you open up any Islamic book and find out the chapter of knowledge, it can be a hadith book, right? If you go to open up the Bukhari and find out the chapter of ilm, if you open up the book of Imam Ghazali, Yahya Ulum ad-Din, and open up the chapter of knowledge, then you will find out a lot of evidence from the Quran, from the hadith, and from the saying of the previous scholars that how beneficial is to learn the ilm of the deen, and how important that is. So I'm not gonna repeat everything, but I'll give a couple of examples that how important the ilm is. So one example that's from the hadith that Rasulullah ﷺ told the Sahaba the many signs of the end time, when the Qiyamah will be coming, what will happen. There are some minor signs, there are some major signs, and many of the hadith shed light into that. In a couple of hadith, Rasulullah said the phenomena that will happen during the time during the hour, the end time, is that people will lose their deen, their iman. They will not believe in Allah. There's one hadith that says that you will not find the iman. There's a very small amount of iman in the heart of the people. Then if you look more carefully, then you will find out that other hadith is telling that people will also lose the moral quality of the dunya. For example, in one hadith, Rasulullah said that people will lose amana, that is the trust. So amana is the trust in Allah, but amana is also trust in between the people. So when you do the business transaction, that you trust each other. So people will lose that too. So that means losing the deen is correlated to losing the dunya, the moral understanding of the dunya. It will not happen that people will lose deen, but they will be very good people, that you can talk to them, that you can do business transaction with them, you can trust with them. This will not happen. So the people will lose both at the same time when they're approaching the Qiyamah. And the hadith, Rasulullah said that when people will lose the aman or trust, then this trust will be taken out of their heart. So in one hadith, the language is like that people will sleep, and when they woke up, they will find the trust has gone from their heart. Now look, this is about the trust and amana. Now in another hadith, Rasulullah said that one of the characteristics in the end time, that people will lose ilm of deen. And then most of the people will make leaders of those people who doesn't have any ilm of the deen. And now these people will give fatwa, these people will teach them deen, but they don't have the knowledge of the deen, so people will go astray. But interesting thing, Rasulullah said that the ilm will not be taken out of the cult of the people, rather than the ilm will be gone by the death of the scholars. Now two things, that people will lose amana and people will lose ilm. But the methodology of losing the amana and ilm is not in the same way. Amana will be gone from the heart, but ilm will not be. Ilm will be gone by the death of the alim. So that means that if a person has ilm, he will not lose it. But if a person has amana, the society is so bad, the peer group pressure is so bad, that people will lose that amana. But the alim, who understand the deen, they will be able to follow that deen, and the ummah will lose them only by the death of the alim. So that is first, how the status of the alim is important in Islam, and this is also showing us that how important the ilm is. So it is our duty to learn the ilm and also to teach the ilm to our generation, especially when we live in a society which is not a Muslim majority country. Because when our kids walk out of our house, go to the school, go for a job and so on, they have to deal with a society where a lot of people are not Muslim, do not understand Islam, and will raise a lot of questions. Now, if they do not have the proper ilm of the deen, then they will be confused, they will be trialed, and it will be very tough for them to preserve their deen. And when we want to teach our kids the deen, then we can do it in two ways. It should be started from the family, by the father and mother, because family is an institution. And then there should be a Muslim community activities. For example, this mosque. For example, an Islamic school. For example, you should have an Islamic dawah organization. Sheikh was talking about the importance of dawah. So we need both. We need our family, where our kids will first start learning deen by seeing the parents, and deen should be present in them. And then second, we should build up academic institution, we should build up Islamic schools, we should build up mosques, we should have the scholars in those institutions who will teach us. So if we can do this both, then it will be easy for us to develop a generation of Islam. So I appreciate these things, that you are giving your time and money and effort to build a mosque. You are giving your time to organize this type of competition with the kids, because this is going to create an environment around that will help them to learn Islam. So this type of steps we should be seriously continuing. Whatever our capacity is. If somebody has some time, he will volunteer. If somebody has money, he will donate. If somebody has the capacity of teaching, he will do that as a teacher. Right? Whatever capacity you have. But this is a noble cause, and we should be a part of that. When we are teaching our kids, we need to understand that this teaching can be by a couple of different ways. The first thing I said that it should be started from the family, and when it started, that a kid will start learning Islam from father and mother, and the most of the part will not be by talking, it will be by walking, what the Sheikh was teaching us. That they will see and learn. That how Rasulullah taught us the prayer. Did he sit down like me and giving a long khutbah, that what is the rukun of the prayer, what is the wajib of the prayer? Did he teach us this way? No. He said that you pray the way I pray. So just look at my prayer and just follow it. Now, this is the toughest way to teach. So this actually means that you will not find out a single moment in Rasulullah's life when he was unattentive in the prayer. Because you can find a single example that he was unattentive in the prayer, then that becomes the sunnah. And that gives you the permissibility that you can follow that. So when Rasulullah said that just see how I pray and you follow it, that actually means he prayed perfectly throughout his life, every time, every single second. So when this consistency is maintained in someone's life, that's the best way to teach. Now as a parents, if we want to be influential, that we'll teach our kids deen, the first thing that I learn deen by myself and I practice that deen by myself. When I do that, then there will be a spiritual impact on the life of my kids. So that's the most important thing. If you think that the sheikh will teach everything, it will not be possible. Because your kids is not spending all the 24 hours with the sheikh, and not all the 24 hours in the mosque. They're spending a lot of time in home with you, seeing the father and mother, and that will have a very serious impact. So if we want that we will be positively impacting the life of our kids, then the first thing is that I will change myself and I will practice the deen by myself. So that should be the first thing. Now the second thing is, as a parents, all of us are not a scholar, all of us are not extraordinarily qualified, but I always want that I will bring my child more qualified than me. So how I put that example in front of them? So sometimes it is not an example, it is a motivation, and it is your contribution. I'm giving two examples that shows that how the motivation and the contribution of the parents actually help to make extraordinary brilliant scholar in the history of Islam. The first example is Imam Ghazali rahimahullah. He was a very brilliant scholar in Islam. People called him Mirza of Islam. He wrote a couple of very magnificent books. He was also a Sufi scholar. Imam Ghazali's father was not a scholar. He was just a very simple man. But he loved scholars. He went to the jurists, he went to the Sufis, sit down there, paid them a lot of respect. And he had an aspiration that his sons will be scholars. So what he did, he had a friend, and that friend was a jurist, and he left some money with his friend. And he told him that if I die, you will take care of my kids. And his friend also knew that he had this aspiration. And his father actually died at his very early age. And then these friends of his father, his uncle, he took care of him. And him and his younger brother, he put both of them in a madrasa, in a very good educational institute. And subhanAllah, he ended up as a very brilliant scholar. We do not know exactly his autobiography, but we can surely say that this kid, when he grew up from his very early childhood, he always saw that his father respected Islamic scholars. He always saw this. His father had an aspiration that his kid will be one day a very big scholar. And that motivated him a lot. That motivated him a lot. This is something that you actually cannot teach by a lot of talk. You can actually teach by your own examples. So that was the contribution of his father, even though his father wasn't a scholar. Let's look into the second example, Imam Shafi rahimahullah. He is the founder of one of the fiqh school, the Shafi madhab, was a very big scholar in Islam, and in fact he was the first scholar who developed the methodology of usul al-fiqh in an organized way. Imam Shafi was born in Gaza, that's in Palestine. And his father also died. It was a very early childhood. And then, at a certain time, his mother made a decision to move from Palestine to Mecca. There was two reasons of this move. This moving is not easy, right? If you just now think that you take a plane and fly for a couple of hours and come from Palestine to Gaza, the Palestine to Mecca, that's very straightforward. But if you think that time, how long that journey was, and how tough that journey was, but why she took the decision, there was two reasons. So one reason was that Imam Shafi was actually connected to the Quraysh tribe. So she wanted to move to a place where he will have a lot of kith and kin. But then there was another reason. That reason that at that time, the city of Mecca and Medina had the best Islamic education. And his mother was always serious that she will provide the best Islamic education to his kid. So Imam Shafi went to Mecca, he started learning Islam in there. Then after a certain time, he moved to Medina and he got Imam Malik as his teacher. Now if you have a brilliant student and a brilliant teacher, then you get the brilliant output. The height of the teacher will shape the height of the student. And the mother of Imam Shafi actually did that. Now these two examples are important for us because this helps us to go beyond our own limitation. Maybe I do not have that knowledge, but I can facilitate the system that my son or daughter will have that knowledge. So that is the contribution of parenting. That's the contribution of the father and mother, that how you nurture this dream to your kids. Now we'll get some parents who are very careful that yes, I will give Islamic education to my kid. And unfortunately in our community there are fathers and mothers who actually did not even teach how to pray to their kids. Never teach that how to recite the Quran. So these are the two different scenarios. So we should be thankful to Allah if He give us that knowledge, that we become careful that what type of education I am giving to my kids. And we should be more and more careful and attentive and serious about that. The next thing about the teaching is the methodology, the teaching methodology. One way of teaching Islam is just theological. I'm giving an example. Let's say that you start reading the Quran and you find out the riba is haram. The interest is haram. You're going to do a business with interest. Now the question comes that why riba is haram? And you can have a very straightforward and simple theological answer because this is haram, because Allah forbade it. Done. This is done. And this is sound understanding. This is haram because Allah said this is haram. This is a very sound understanding. There is no problem. But we can add on top of that a rational understanding. That now I can understand from economy point of view that why a zero interest economy is better. I can understand that how riba actually deprive a lot of poor people. I can understand that what is the bad economic consequence of that system is. Now we need to be very careful that learning deen should be theological because no rational understanding can replace the original understanding that it has been forbidden by Allah. But this rational understanding can help us to understand what is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind it. Now why we need a rational understanding here? One of the reasons, because when we will communicating with the non-Muslims, with the atheist people, with the other people who does not understand Islam, they will not understand a theological language. We understand a theological language, so this is good for us. But when we talk to them, they do not understand a theological language. So we need a communicative language to deal with them. We need a communicative language to deal with them. Right? So for example, we know that the Christians are doing shirk. Now, if you deal with a Christian and you start with that, that will be an offensive manifestation of our deen, and that will not be effective. That will not be effective. So that's why we first need to learn our deen from a theological point of view, but secondly, we need to add a rational understanding on top of that, and we should communicate our language with the people outside of the deen through that communicative weapons, not through a theological language, because that will not be effective. I can give one example. I will not go through in detail of that, but I will give just the reference. You can go and find out an Islamic book, or you just Google and see that how that works. There is one example in the time of Rasulullah in the Meccan period. Some Muslims from the Mecca migrated to Abyssinia, what is Ethiopia now. There was a king there, King Najasi, and when they migrated, then at the same time there was a delegate from Mecca went there to make them come back to the Mecca. Then Zafar ibn Abu Talib, he was cousin of Rasulullah, he was the leader of the Muslim delegate there, and he was called to the king to describe that what they believe and what's happening in there. And when the king asked him that what do you believe in and what's your deed, he gave an eloquent speech that what Rasulullah was preaching. And if you look into the text of that, then you will find out that how beautifully he connected the theological understanding of Islam to a communicative way so that the non-Muslim also understand the merit of Islam. And I will request the Sheikh in another time so that he can go through the text and teach you that how brilliant was Jafar ibn Abu Talib to describe that how brilliant Islam was. So my point is, we need to learn the deen from a theological point of view, but we should add a rational understanding on top of that so that we can effectively communicate with the people outside of our religion. The last point about the teaching methodology, that when we teach our kids, we should motivate them to achieve excellence in deen and also in dunya. They should have the skill of the deen, and at the same time, they should have skill in the dunya. And one of the reasons, if you have the skill in dunya, then your presence will be a dawah. Your presence will be a dawah. We have now the Muslim generation in the North America that almost the fast growing religious community. The fast growing religious community. That means that we will have more young generations in coming years. Now, if we can teach them deen, that they will not lose Islam, they will be the ambassador of Islam, and at the same time, if they become qualified people, then the rest of the society will look into them, and Islam will be branded by them. I will give one example and one statistics. Let's go to the statistics first. In North American country, this is statistics actually for United States, you can correlate a college degree with the mean household income. Generally, the people who has a college degree, they have better household income. That is in the statistics. Now, you can relate this college degree and better household income to their influence to the society. The people who are more educated, the people who has more income, they are usually more influential in the society. Now, one of the research center has a breakdown that what is the percentage of the people who has a college degree based on their religious identities. Muslims are 7th in number. The first group, I'll not say who are they have 77% people has a college degree. And Muslims has 39% college degree. Almost half of that. Almost half of that. If we want to perform well and do dawah by our quality, then this 39% should go to 80%. This 39% should go to 80%. So when we teach our kids, what are our goals? One goal, we will teach them our deen, we'll preserve our deen. They will not lose that, they will not lose their identity. Right? They will achieve the taqwa. But we should have another target. It will be fardul kifaya, because if we can achieve that, then the community will be benefited. If we can raise this number, that yes, 80% of our next generation kid will have a college degree, that will significantly impact their influence on the society and their dawah in the society. So that will be one of the most efficient way. Now I'll give an example from the Quran that this procedure, how effective that is. We have a chapter in the Quran about Surah Yusuf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. So when Yusuf alayhi salam was brought into Egypt, I mean the Sheikh has a PhD on Surah Yusuf. He knows all the linguistic things in there. And I'll just point out a very small thing from there. So when Yusuf alayhi salam was brought into Egypt, he was a free man. What he was? How he was brought into Egypt? As a free man or as a slave or as an immigrant? As a slave, right? We are immigrant here, right? We are not. Most of us are not the first generation people here. Even our kids, right? They are born here, but they are also an immigrant lineage. Now Yusuf alayhi salam, he was a slave. His status was better than us or lower than us? Right? Worse than us. Worse than us. He was just a slave, not even an immigrant. Now, how he ended up in that society? Being a political elite in the society, right? He ended up as a political elite in the society. Why? Why the political system in Egypt gave a space to Yusuf alayhi salam? Because he first had the capacity to interpret the dream of the king. That was an indication of a crisis in the society, and he claimed that I know what this crisis is. He said, I know how to solve this crisis is. And then he said, give me the power, I will work on that. Now you cannot think that those people are naive, that some people has come in here and claimed, give me the power, and they gave it. No. They gave him the power because they find out that he is a man with advanced intellectual capacity who can identify a problem that they actually could not understand that there is a problem. And then they don't know how to solve the problem. But Yusuf alayhi salam was able not to identify the problem, but to solve the problem. He has that capacity. Now this capacity is not a prophetic capacity. This is not the capacity of knowing the wahi. This is not the capacity of knowing the Jannat and Jahannam. This is not a capacity of teaching you deen. This is a capacity to solve a problem of the dunya. But subhanallah, with that capacity, Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him honor in that society. And that capacity was very helpful for him to preach the deen of Allah. He did not hide that he was a prophet. He did not stop preaching. But he got his position due to his quality of the dunya. Now what is the lesson from that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we have lessons in the Surah Yusuf. We have many lessons. But one of that lesson is that if we can improve the quality of our dunya, that will help us to interact more honorably and to make our honorable position and integration in the society. So that should be one of the targets when we teach our kids, that we'll teach them deen, but at the same time, we'll teach them dunya. Of course, not the haram things of the dunya. Those things of the dunya, that's halal in Islam and beneficial for human being. And if we can do that, then that will be a beautiful Muslim generation that will be contributing to the Western society, inshallah. Now, if we want to do that, then I said that we can do that in two ways. One, we need a good Muslim family. That will be the first thing where our kids will start learning the deen. And then we need the second thing is a good Muslim community. that will have the different institutions and scholars who will teach them the deen, and they will get a good environment and Muslim friends and positive peer pressure so that they can learn the deen very easily. Now, let us start with a good Muslim family, that we should be good husband and good wife and good father and good mothers. And that examples we should also learn from Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is examples for us. Everything in his life is so beautiful and so magnificent that we can learn from that. I will go through 2 things from his life and will deduce something to learn from that, and that will help us to develop a very Muslim family. The first thing, when Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam got the revelation, Jibreel Alayhi Salam came to him, see him, and asked him to recite from the Quran. If you read the hadith, you will find out that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a little bit scared. He did not understand what's happening around him. When he came home, he approached Khadija radiallahu anha and showed his shakiness. That what happened around me? I'm afraid. Now if you read the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, Khadija radiallahu anha, she replied to Rasulullah in a beautiful way. I will quote just the English translation and I'll leave the Arabic for the Sheikh for the next time. When Rasulullah said that I fear that something may happen to me, then Khadija radiallahu anha replied, never. Allahi, Allah will never disgrace you. Look at her confidence. That why she had this confidence, and she explained that. She said that you keep good relations with your kith and kin, you help the poor and the destitute, you serve your guests generously, and assist the deserving calamity-affected people. So Khadija radiallahu anha knew that this person is a good man, and all the things he does are good and moral. So something wrong, something problematic from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot happen in his life. Now this is a certificate how good Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was. But I'm bringing this example for a different reason. That is that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a husband, right? And he had that capacity to earn the confidence of his wife. He was such a good man. He was such a good man that he earned the confidence of his wife. Now he was a man, and that's why it's this way. But when we have the lesson from that actually mean that a wife should earn the confidence of the husband, and the husband should earn the confidence of wife in such a way. And more importantly, this confidence actually grew before he became the prophet, right? This understanding of Khadija was before Rasulullah became the prophet. So this is not a theological staff. It's not that how long Rasulullah prayed. This is not about that how long his tahajjud is, how many days he is fasting. This is actually the other things. How good he is, how compassionate he is for the people, how decent person he is. So that was the confidence. So if we want to build a good Muslim family that will be good for the kids for learning Islam, the first thing is that as a husband I should be such a good man that I can earn the trust of my wife. And as a wife I should be such a good woman that I can earn the trust of my husband. Now the second example from Rasulullah's life is the story of Zaid bin Harisa radiallahu anhu. He was the adopted child of Rasulullah, and Islam at a certain point actually stopped that you can't adopt, and Rasulullah didn't declare that he will not be his adopted son. This is something like a foster care. But he was highly related to Rasulullah. Now you know the story that Zaid, when he was brought to Rasulullah, he was actually a slave of Khadija. But he was very young. After the marriage of Rasulullah to Khadija, she gave this young boy to Rasulullah. Now, if you put yourself into the shoes of Zaid, then you understand that a very young boy, he was just being enslaved, lost his father and mother, doesn't know where they are, suddenly kept in an environment that was completely foreign and abnormal to him, and his master was changing. For some days he was with a person, then he went to Khadija, then he came to Rasulullah. And suddenly, he found out that this person is something different. He's a fatherly figure. This is the first time in his life he started to forget his memory of the slavery. And in front of subhanAllah, he's a very good man. And he was seeing the image of his father in Rasulullah. He was so much good man. Now look, this love of Rasulullah was so impactful in his heart that when his own father and mother came and found out him and asked him to go with them, then Zayd rejected. And he chose to be with Rasulullah. And this is the lesson that if you love somebody, you get it back. Right? I'm quoting this example that Rasulullah was so good a person that he was trusted by kids. He was beloved by kids. So that is the second characteristics, that being a good Muslim family means you will be so much compassionate father and mother that not only your kid, any kid would love you. Any kid, an orphan, if he see you for an hour, he will fall in love with you. That was the characteristics of Rasulullah. And that is the sunnah to follow to be a good father and mother, to be a compassionate father and mother. We can understand the sunnah in a technical, tricky way that look into one act of Rasulullah and find out whether this is wajib, or this is the sunnah, or mustahab, or something else. But in other way, we look into the Rasulullah life and try to find out a qualitative understanding that what is the path he followed, what is the way he acted, what is the way he lived his life. So that is the other sunnah. So these two examples, the things that we need to learn from the life of Rasulullah, that he was such a good man, he was trusted by his wife. And he was such a good man, he was trusted by a young kid who was not connected to him at all. But he was so lovely and so compassionate. And actually that was not the culture of the Arabs. Even, for the Bedouins, we have a multiple hadith that Rasulullah was kissing a kid who was so compassionate, and somebody came and asked, "Ya Rasulullah, do you kiss kids?" That was a little bit strange for them, that a prophet can be so compassionate, that he's kissing a kid, he's hugging them, he's playing with them. So that was not the traditional Arab culture to them. But Rasulullah was unlike that. I'm telling this because especially the fatherhood is also portrayed in some of the society, including the traditional Bangladeshi society, that you should be harsh and hard, right? You cannot be so lovely and compassionate. You need to make a distance with your child. That means you're a good father. But actually that's not the Islamic understanding. So we should be very careful about that. Now the last thing that I'll be saying, that family as an institution is a spiritual institution. It's not only, it's a social science institution, no doubt. It's a social institution. And if you go and read social science, you'll find out 10 different reasons why this family was formed. And you'll find out 10 different reasons that why family is in crisis now in the whole world, in the modern time. But if we look through from a spiritual point of view, from the religious lens, from the Islamic lens, then we'll find out that Islam always had a very big importance in family, preserving the family, maintaining the family perfectly. And if we look from those point of view, then we'll understand the spiritual merit and the connections. I will go through a couple of things that will help us to understand that how this connection works. This is some spiritual step. So for example, in the dunya, let's say that some parents are rich, then their kids get benefited from their money. It's very simple. And in other way, if the kids get a very good education, becomes a very highly paid professional, their parents get benefited from that. Now in spirituality, this also happens the same way. If the father and mothers becomes highly advanced in spirituality, then the kids get benefited. And it is the other way. I'm giving one example from the Quran. This is in Surah Kahf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Kahf was talking about an incident between Khidir alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam. So Musa alayhi salam was a prophet, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to go to Khidir alayhi salam and learn ilm from him, learn hikmah from him. And Musa alayhi salam went to Khidir alayhi salam and they started the journey, and 3 different events happened. When the events happened, then Musa alayhi salam did not understand why it happened. Later on, Khidir alayhi salam explained why it happened. And one of the events was that both of them went to a small town and they asked the people for some food and help and place, but those people was rude to them and they refused. On the way back, Khidir alayhi salam helped them to build a wall. There was a wall there and the wall was broken. Then Khidir alayhi salam gave a lot of time to fix that. So when he fixed it, Musa alayhi salam was a little bit angry and asked him that, why you did that? They did not pay you. You could ask them for money. And he was disturbed because those people did not give them food when they asked for food. That was the main thing. Now later on, Khidir alayhi salam explained that he did this not due to his own desire, rather than it was the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to build the wall? Because beneath the wall there was some treasure. And some of the scholars say it was some ilm, and some of the scholars say it may be some money. Now if you think that this is some money, that makes maybe more sense to explain this incident. So let's think that there was some money in there. Now the owner of this treasure was 2 orphan boys. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked Khidir alayhi salam to build the wall so that this money becomes preserved until they grow enough to take this money and take care of their own life. Now why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself took this responsibility of actively preserving that money by Khidir alayhi salam? Of course there was something good into the life of those 2 orphans. But interestingly, the reason was not that 2 young boys. The reason was their father. Because their father was a good man. He was a man who was beloved by Allah. He was a man whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala liked. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him away. Now Allah himself is taking care of those 2 young kids. So now these taking care of Allah, of these 2 young kids, actually due to the spiritual advancement of his father. Subhanallah. We think about the security of our kids. We do a lot of stuff. We put some money, right, for their college education. We buy insurance. Nothing is haram. Nothing is bad. But at the same time, we should think about this, that my ibadah, my relationship with Allah, that's also an insurance for my kids. And Surah Al-Kahf is teaching us that exists. It's hard to understand that. It is very hard to make empirical connection with all the events happening around us and to our understanding. But this single example with Khidir alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam actually revealing the signs of Allah, that whatever happening around us, that has a reason. That has a spiritual reason. And there is a spiritual law, a spiritual wall where everything is fixed according to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We may not understand. But if we have a good spirituality and a good connection to Allah, then our kids will be benefited by that. Now this also works the other way. When we get old, then our kids take care of us and they pray for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this dua in the Quran. And when we die, they keep doing this dua for us. Now Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us when a person dies, 3 deeds continue, even after death. So I am gone, but if I have done those, I will be still benefited even after my death. One of them is the dua of the child. If the child is a righteous child who believes in Allah, who perform the duties of Islam well, and make dua for the parents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then due to this dua, the parents will be benefited even after their death. So this is the interconnection. The spirituality of the parents helps the child to be a better person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when the child grow up as a good Muslim, as a muttaqi, as a muhsin, then his dua become beneficial for the parents. And when all of them die and go to the Jannah, then they will recognize each other. We will not lose our memory when we go to the Jannah. We'll find out who is our parents, who is our kids, who is our relatives. We'll know them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do a favor to us. That they say that we go to the Jannah and some people has a lower status and some people has another status. They say the father has a higher status and the child has a lower status. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the opportunity that they will live together. Now we can do that in 2 ways. You can say, okay, the higher status people can go to the lower status and you can live together. Or the other way, you can say that you will get a free upgradation, right? You are in the economy class, right? The father is maybe in the business class. Now if you ask me, look, my child is also traveling with me, can I sit with him? Yeah, you can just go from business class and sit with him and the other person promoted to the business class. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rahman Rahim. He will not do that. He will give the person who is in the economy class a free upgradation that you can join your father in the business class. Subhanallah. So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rahman Rahim. So people will be even benefited when they go to the Jannah if they are close relatives people, the father or the mother or the boys, the sons or the daughters has a higher status to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will be combined together. So this benefit starts in the dunya. It's not only the akhirah, but it does not end in the dunya. It goes all together to the akhirah. And this is one of the reasons why Rasulullah said, when you go to marry, see the deen. Look at the spirituality first. The beauty, the wealth, the status, all this comes to the second because all this ended with the dunya. But when you looked into the spirituality that does not end in the dunya, the benefit goes to akhirah. The benefit goes to akhirah. So that's the fundamental understanding of Islamic family, that this is the spiritual understanding. And we should be very serious about that. Let's come back to the dua of Rabbi Irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. This is a very beautiful dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us in the Quran. Right? All the young kids should learn this and pray for their parents. Now this dua in the Quran actually comes with the verses that talk about our duty to our parents when they are old. Now our scholars say that why the dua is there. They say that when my parents are old, it is my duty to take care of them. Because they did the same thing for me. Now I'm not capable of doing all the things they deserve. And that's why, in addition to doing my duty to them, I am praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so they are not suffering for my inabilities. Rather than they're getting what I can do, on top of that, they're getting the rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's a beautiful explanation. But there are something more on top of that. This dua is a unique dua where we are not only making our general dua to Allah, but also we are making a reference. We first say, Rabbi Irhamhuma, Ya Rab, do rahmah on them. So that's a complete dua. If I say, Ya Rabbil Alamin, do rahmah on my parents, you are done. But you're saying one more thing. Kama rabbayani saghira. That do this rahmah as they did rahmah on me when I was a young kid. Now why I'm putting this reference? Does it mean that I'm limiting the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course not. If it's that, then it would not be in the Quran. But why I'm putting a reference in there? This is when I make a dua, the Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana, Ya Rabbil Alamin, give me hasana on this dunya. I'm not making any reference. That's a general dua. But when I'm saying, Ya Rabbul Alameen, do rahmah on my parents, at the same time I'm saying, Kama Rabbayani Saghira. And we did not make that up by ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that. Now what is the reason why we are making a difference? One of the reasons that this is a shukr from me, that I was benefited by my parents when I was a very young kid. It's very tough to raise a child. And the father and mother did that. So every time I make this dua, I go to my childhood memories and find out that I have some debt in there. And such a debt that I cannot pay off. And that's why every time I do the dua, I make this reference. Now another explanation is that the rahmah that a father or mother can show to their kids, that is the highest example of the rahmah within human capacity. If you look into the human capacity, that's the highest example of rahmah. Nobody can surpass that within human capacity. And this is why in another hadith, Rasulullah was in a battle and there was some captive and there was a woman in there. She was breastfeeding and she was looking for her kid. Her kid was lost. Then she was just looking to every possible way, and if you find a kid, she was breastfeeding to him. Then Rasulullah was asking the Sahaba, do you think that this mother can throw her child into the hellfire? The Sahaba answered no. Then Rasulullah said the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even more than that. Now Rasulullah is giving an example. So this is the rahmah, the manifestation of the rahmah in human understanding, the most brilliant way. Now we can understand the rahmah of Allah is even more than that. So that's why this dua has a difference. This is an acknowledgement from our side that we remember what our parents did for us. And then we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a reference that that was their best day, the best rahmah they showed. So Ya Rabbul Alameen, you compensate them for this. Now there is one more thing. If we read this dua from the parents' end, let's say that I'm parents, I'm taking care of my young kids, and I know that one day I'll be getting old. And my child will be making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, putting a reference that how much rahmah I showed to them when they was young. So then the parenting becomes that we should be cautious that how we treat them. I mean, this is not now abnormal that you will find out the parents who are abusing their kids. You will find out the parents who are not so good with their kids. Maybe it's little in the Muslim community, but if you look into the Western community and other society, we have a growing tendencies. Now this dua actually reminding us that parenting is a responsibility. And if I am not a good father, if I am not a good mother, and my child in my old age make dua to Allah, Rabbi Rahmanuma Kama Rabbayani Saghira, then it doesn't remain as a dua. It becomes a curse because I did not treat him with rahmah. So this dua is also a reminder for the parents that when I am parents, I should take care of my kids very well. Now, of course, in our classical culture, the parents are good. If you do not think about this, even you are good. But if you actively think that I should be a better father, I should be a better mother, I should be a better parents, you can improve yourself. We can improve yourself. So every time we read this dua from the parent side, we should remind ourselves that we should work to improve ourselves as a better parents. And every time we read this dua from the kids' end, we should remind that our parents has done a tremendous thing for us when we was young, and our duty is to serve them with respect, with honor, with humility, and with dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we understand all this spiritual dimension of the family and maintain that, and then in addition to the family, we develop these Islamic institutes where we can learn deen and remind each other deen. Then inshallah, through this, we'll be able to develop a generation. They will be good Muslims, they will be good human beings, they will be contributing to the humanity, and they will enhance the da'wah by their life, by their examples. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our efforts on the way of Deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ilm and capacity to be better parents, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the capacity to teach our kids better Deen. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khair, Galib bhai. Such a nice speech. I think there are a lot of parents who was expecting some in Malaysia, but inshallah next time it will be in English. So I would like to ask all the participants, please come front. All the participants, please come front. Just from here, yes. Yeah. Shh. You will move but no sounds. Now the gift time, okay?
কি জন্য আমরা সবগুলো রাখছি ভাইয়া আমরা সবগুলো রাখছেন তো সবগুলো কাছে সম্পন্ন করে
তোমরা আরেকটু পিছনে যাও, আরেকটু পিছনে, you go little bit behind,